There's like 60 people that see me and they start clapping. Everybody's clapping. There's divers in the water, Coast Guards in the water. Everybody's looking for me. I get to the parking lot and I have people all over. And there's like 4 fire departments there, cops all over. I felt so horrible. All these people are coming, but so good and relieved that if something happened, they'd be there for you. I had to sign a certificate saying that I wasn't dead, my name, my address, and I'm apologizing to the Coast Guard. And the Coast Guard's like, oh, don't worry about it. We need this training. This is how we get funded. So I felt a little bit better.
Welcome back to Cameras Off. Please enjoy part 1 of Between Casts. There's always that one guy who won't leave the water. The last guy still casting on the beach or the boat, sleeping in his truck, waking up by the beach, having waves crash over him at 3 in the morning. It's all good as long as he's out there. Guide Bill Wetzel found a way to be that guy, all while keeping the family intact at home. Quite a feat. Here's to doing what you love, wherever it takes you, with your host, Jamie Howard.
How was the skiing trip? Sounds like it was all good.
My knees are toast, dude. My knees are shot. My left knee is, my wife's like, you want to go hiking today? And I took the chance and I went hiking. You know, I did a couple miles. Got my bourbon.
What bourbon you got there?
Well, I went with Maker's Mark tonight.
Yeah. That's
You know, it's my standard, my standard.
You got another one you like?
I like Woodford. Woodford I like a lot. I figured, during our talk, I got that and I got some water, It prevents me from cursing too much. When I talk about fishing, I just curse.
Get excited.
I don't even think about it.
I always thought of you as this Midwest kid who grew up fishing, this idyllic life, and when you're just out there discovering nature. And then there's this shift. Your mother meets this guy. You had described him as with a bunch of kills under his belt.
Well, Bill Allard. Yeah, it was my stepfather. He was in more shootouts. I'm pretty sure of this statistic. He's been in more shootouts than any other law enforcement officer in the history of the United States. I think. He was in the New York City Stakeout Unit. That was a volunteer unit. He was also 2-time United States pistol champion. It was a volunteer unit where the New York City police would basically go behind, a place would be getting hit, a place would be getting robbed frequently. They would go behind the wall. They'd set themselves up and the guy would come in and he'd say, he would tell me, he said, we shot to kill. He said, a wounded animal, here's what he said, wounded animal is the most dangerous animal. He always told me. So, and they're all animals. So.
How did you feel about that growing up in terms of discipline? Did it make you curb what your ideas of what you were going to do in terms of, because we all break the rules.
No, I broke the rules, but I knew, me and him we had our challenges. He was my stepfather. So there was the challenge of that. There was a challenge of coming from Ohio and being an Ohio kid to Queens and then Long Island and all that stuff. I had a lot of challenges at that time, I remember, but.
Where did your mom meet him?
He was the United States pistol champion, but not at that time. He was in a pistol match in Camp Perry, Ohio. It's by Port Clinton. They used to have the United States pistol championships over there. So he was there, and my mother went out one night with her sister, which she never went out, and she met him. And next thing you know, we're driving through a snowstorm to Queens. From my little house in Ohio to Queens.
Oh, my God.
Huge snowstorm. Oh, my God, it was crazy.
And you were heading to Queens, Ohio.
In a 1975 Ford Granada, which I inherited that car. That was my first car.
Amazing.
I fished the shit out of that car, man.
I remember you mentioned that car. In fact, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So when Bill Wetzel, who I think of now as this kind of guy, king of his own domain, when you were tossed into that school, that was Bill Wetzel, the guy we know now, who's totally confident.
Billy Wetzel
down the beach. How was that guy in Queens the first day?
It was, oh my God. I don't even like to think about it, to tell you the truth. But I just remember at first, when I first got to Queens, it was like I had 2 weeks off and I was like, okay, I don't have school. I was very nervous. And then my first day of school, I don't know if you've ever been so nervous that you can't think, like your brain just is like, it's like mush. You just can't think of anything. And that's how I was that day. And I remember the biggest thing I remember is them having to sign my name. And I was shaking so bad, I couldn't sign my name. And then I thought, because I couldn't sign my name, they thought that I was like, I
You're
belong in special ed or something
right.
because I couldn't sign my name. But it wasn't because I needed special ed. It was because I was so nervous. It's culture shock.
You're in the middle of something that probably feels like another planet, you know?
Yeah.
Or-
Those challenges, you know what? Those
Yeah.
kind of
Mhm.
challenges in life, those things
Mhm.
that you hate at the time,
Yeah.
I find that adversity that you have eventually makes you a better person.
Thinking about your urban background and this image of you being dropped off on a bridge at 1 a.m. by your stepfather. Was that in Queens or
That was in Queens. I was in 8th grade. That
so
was
you
in
were in eighth
Queens.
grade and you were dropped off on a bridge at what time?
Dude, it had to be like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, something like that, really late.
And your stepdad just said, "Good luck."
He gave me he gave me a bucket full of bunker.
Hmm.
And he said, you just cut the heads off. And, those are the size of fish I catch in Ohio.
Hmm.
You could just cut the heads off, put it on a hook, and throw it out there off this bridge. It was in Jamaica, Queens. So I guess it was probably Jamaica Bay, I would assume.
Oh
He's like,
man.
I'll pick you up in a couple hours. I don't know if he was working. I don't know if he was in uniform. I'm like, okay.
He
And
had, he
I
had to
got out
stash you
there.
somewhere.
Right. I got out there. I'm looking around, but actually, my head was focused on I'm going to catch something big. He says I'm going to catch something big. Well, I didn't catch anything, but I met some other fishermen there, so I didn't get killed or anything. And he
Oh
was back in a
God.
couple hours. But man, it was a little scary too at the same time.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't think
those are
my
the days.
mother ever realized that he did that for some reason. Some reason, I think that she might have. I don't know. I don't think she would have let that happen. you know, she probably thought we were going somewhere else. I don't know. I don't know.
Gangster had
He
somewhere to
he would
be.
stretch the truth a little
Yeah.
sometimes.
You guys were. He owed you one after that. Maybe
Yeah, yeah.
you survived again. Did
Any
you?
adverse things that you have in your life is going to make you a better person, I think.
It's like confidence. You think about something in a bad spot and you think back to that. I got through that.
Right. You got through it. You got through the shit. You start to learn how to do more things.
You used to work at the Levitt's furniture store. It was simultaneously maybe the best job you ever had, and then also maybe the most hazardous.
I used to work for Levitt's, right? And me and the guys sometimes we would just drink afterwards. We were going out, and after work we would go out sometimes, and I don't know where we were going. Bob's Bunnery Pub in Garden City on Long Island, and it was a rainy, nasty night. I'm following all my friends, right? And my friend had like I don't know what he had. He may have had another Honda, and I'm following him, and somehow I lost him, but I thought it was the same Honda ahead of me. So I'm following this guy I don't know suddenly,
Oh
and I'm
no.
going, and he goes like in the neighborhood. He's weaving in and out of the neighborhood. What are you doing? I'm brighting him, flashing my lights on him. So I'm figuring it's my friend. Like, what are you doing? Why are we in this neighborhood? Why are you going so fast?
Right.
Because the guy thought obviously thought I was following him. So all of a sudden, the guy stops his car in the middle of the neighborhood, has a pistol, comes out. And I'm like, oh, really? I thought it was my friend. Comes out and he has it in my head. He's like, what the fuck are you doing? He's like screaming at me. And I think he was a cop, but he really never identified himself, you know. I'm like, oh my, I was just freaking out. I'm like, I'm just following my friends. I was going to dinner. I thought you were them. That's why I was writing you.
Glad he
Oh
didn't
my
shoot
God. Me too.
Talk about
Could
mistaken
could
identity.
could have been Jamie.
Good God, man.
It
No
ruined my
way.
fishing
No. No.
career.
America's fishing hero. You've had a star over you to keep you protected. You survived. You made it through Queens.
I was in Queens for like a year, maybe.
Yeah.
We lived in a small little apartment above this elderly Italian lady. Then my mother was like, "We got to get out of here. I can't take it anymore." So my stepfather, the gun guy, bought a house on Long Island, Bayville, Long Island, right? And I'm looking around, and in my mind, I'm like, "Holy shit!" Because in Ohio, I grew up like trapping with my cousins, hunting, fishing. My grandfather on my mother's side was a very well-known trapper in Ohio. And I'm like, wow, I can hunt here, I can trap here. Meanwhile, it was all these people's backyards. You know what I mean? It was like just like very wealthy people, their land, their yards. And I'm just looking around the first time I get there. I'm like, I'm hunting, I'm trapping. I did set traps too. I never got anything, thank God, because it could have been a cat or whatever. So
Like Crocodile Dundee out there.
right. We happened to move. I always fished. I fished constantly in Ohio. I fished every single day. And we moved next to my neighbor, Rod Rosso. And Rod introduced me to striped bass. And we went to the Brickyards in Center Island. And the Brickyards is like the point. It used to be an island, and one side of it is the Long Island Sound, and the other side of it is Oyster Bay. So we fished the Oyster Bay side on this area called the Brickyards, where it just kind of drops out, and there's like cord grass along the entire island. Light tackle, we were drifting worms along the cord grass, and every pass that we made with this boat we made was a striped bass. And they weren't that big. They were maybe like 15 pounds, but to me they were that. I never caught fish that big, and they were tremendous. I was like, oh my God. And they were the most beautiful fish I've ever seen in my entire life. With the stripes. I remember just looking at them and just like, holy shit, I just couldn't believe it.
What year was this?
Yeah, 78, I think. From then on, I just started surf fishing, but I didn't know what was surf fishing. I was just going from the shore. I had a little 7-foot rod. My next door neighbor kept on saying, you have to get another rod. And, we didn't have any money, and I didn't want to ask my mother to buy me a new fishing rod, like a pen. You got to get a pen. You got to get a pen. I didn't have it. We didn't have money back then. And I don't even know what I had. I remember I had this Daiwa 7-foot rod. It was just like a noodle. But I would go out every night. And my mother knew, like when I was in Ohio, even as a kid, she would let me go out anytime I wanted and fish, because she knew I would be home. And by the time I was in 9th grade then, she'd let me go out at like, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, I told her where I was going to fish. I'd be back. So I'd go out there. I remember I just had nothing. I had a Rapala. Had like a Rapala, and then I got some other lures, and I was catching striped bass. And I was like, holy shit. You know the surf bags?
Your tools and plugs.
Yeah. So back then, I couldn't afford a surf bag. So I used a coffee can. I taped it. I taped a rope to it, and I had all my plugs in the coffee can. That was my surf bag.
Coffee can solved a lot of problems. Greg
Fucking
Myers,
man.
throw all his plugs in there as
Who
well.
did?
He's got a world record. Greg Myers.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, Craig. Yeah.
Yeah, you remember?
Yeah.
His famous coffee can he brought with him and running the coast. He said, "I'll just take this coffee can of lures. I'm good."
Wow. Maybe I'll get a world record someday. I almost had a world record porgy once. I was in the back bay of Montauk fishing a darter, a super strike darter. They're a pretty big plug. It's 2 3/8 ounce. And I catch porgies on them all the time at night. But this porgy, man, I get this porgy in, and there's nobody around. And I get this porgy in. I look at him. I'm like, wow, man, that's the biggest porgy I've ever seen in my entire life. It's got to be 5 pounds or better.
Jeez.
And I look at it, I throw it back. And then on my way home, I'm like, let me look up the world record porgy. The fucking world record porgy was 5 pounds, 5 ounces. So who knew?
We'll add that to the description. World record holder.
Right.
You made your way out to Long Island. You kept fishing in your life. When did it shift to the top priority? Would you say it's just always been there as the top? You worked everything around it, jobs,
it's always been the top priority. I can remember since I've been 3 years old. I remember being, very small, and taking like literally in puddles. I thought there was fish, and I would take a stick and put a leaf on it, and think I was going to catch a fish in the puddle. I remember in my bedroom when I lived in Ohio as a kid, laying on my bed, and the square tiles, like on a bedroom floor, like the old asbestos square tiles, looking at the asbestos square tiles and thinking those were places where fish could hide. That's how it's been for me.
So when you post those videos of you skiing and thinking about fishing, you're not just pretending, you actually are thinking.
No, I start thinking, I'm like, this is what I'm thinking about. Let me just post it, because it's kind of weird that I'm skiing and thinking about fishing. I kind of find it kind of interesting that my head would think that way.
You sort of crossed a threshold at one point where you said, I'm pretty confident at this. I think I'm pretty good at catching striped bass, to the point where I think I need to be a guide.
What's interesting with that is I was really cocky at one point. I remember the first time, because I've been fishing all my life. So I go out to Montauk for the first time, in 1982. I was in 11th grade, and I see these guys with these 11-foot rods, and they got corkers taped on their feet, and I'm like, these guys. I remember thinking I had a bandana over my head, thinking I'm all cool. These guys don't know what the fuck. These guys, they don't know what they're doing. What are these 11-foot? You don't need an 11-foot rod to catch striped bass. You don't need this. What are they doing? And I went out there and I got my ass spanked. I remember going underneath the lighthouse. I just had a pair of waders, no belt on, no top, 7-foot rod, and just got hammered. I'm like, wow, why? What is going on here?
I'd like to have seen that. I'd like to watch you.
Oh my God. So it took me, I think it took me at least over a year to catch my first striped bass out there, and get the gear, get a little bit better gear. I didn't really have any money, so I didn't have the best gear back then. I do now.
Well, it's funny because that Van Stahl reel that you have, you're thinking of selling, which is kind of a keepsake and it may end
Oh
up
my
not
God.
getting sold. But the fact that your daughter was complaining about it, you've clearly infected the whole family. You've clearly influenced the whole family.
I was going to sell that reel. I'm like, I probably could get $1,000 for this reel, and the guy was going to buy it, and I was going to sell it basically to pay for her lacrosse.
Right.
And I'm laying there with her one night. I'm like, oh, I'm selling my first Von Style I ever got. And I'll never forget, she's laying right next to me. She's like, what? She like hits me. She's like, what? I can't believe you would do that. I'm like, what do you mean? Gaga got you that, because it was, I begged for that reel once when I was a kid, and my mother, who's deceased, got me that reel. So it's got some sentimental value to me, and I guess to her. She's like, you can't sell it. Gaga got you that reel. Gaga got you that reel. I remember when I first got that reel, it's a Von Style 300. I slept with it, not because I was like, whoa. I was just like looking at it, and I just felt it was. And actually, I know you're a big fly rod guy. I was in the Long Island Fly Rodders at the time, and like a few days later, I guess, or maybe that spring, I took the VS with me, and we were building ramps for the handicap at the time, and we were fishing fly fishing upstate. I did pretty good with my 4-weight up there.
I thought that was interesting. I think you're just fishy dude. Didn't you go up there as the guy didn't know anything and you were out fishing him with a fly rod?
That's what my friend said. My buddy's he's really great with a fly rod. My buddy Mike at the time, he always called me Willie. He goes, Willie, you'll do, don't, because I was all nervous. I'm like, these guys, look at them. I mean, they have everything. They're tying their own flies. They're smoking cigars. They're doing this. I don't do any of that. I came there with like my surf belt with, probably like a boga or who knows what hanging from it, and my big pliers, and I freaking I'll fish almost everybody there.
Nymphs?
Yeah, nymphs.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody was doing the dry flies. I'm like, and my buddy's like, just do the nymphs. You'll do well with the nymphs. I was
Yeah.
using nymphs. I was like,
Perfect. Perfect.
doing it,
And
having fun. Then I got into the fly scene for a while there. I wasn't ever really that good. I was nowhere near like Jamie Howard, but
we need to go fishing. Shulkin and I went fishing one time. It was a blast. I think about you coming out here with all these people that were here and how many are actually still left of that group. How does that landscape look to you right now?
the fish themselves are on the decline, obviously.
Yeah.
So a couple things in that question. My friends too. I fished with a lot of mentors. I had their older guys. Some of them passed away. Delaware Bud just recently passed away, and Willie Young. A lot of guys in the surf community know like Willie Young and those guys. I remember one guy said to me, you're gonna have to. Actually, he said it to one of the crew, and I'm the youngest. He says, you're gonna have to watch us all die. Oh my God, that's a scary thought. And this was years ago. He actually said that to my friend UPS Richie. Richie told me that. And I'm like, oh my God, it could be true. Who knows what's going to happen?
But the nicknames live on. UPS Richie,
Yeah,
Benny the winemaker. Tell me about Benny the
Benny.
winemaker. He had some good advice for you, some incredible advice, I think.
Oh, Benny the winemaker. He was in Bayville. Bayville Benny, but the winemaker. So he's an older guy, Italian guy. Made ass-kicking wine, by the way. He knew I was into fishing, and he would tell me things, and he said, well, one of the things you can do is you can call the fish. And he told me, all you got to do is go in and slap your hand around and the fish will come to you. Yeah, okay. I didn't really, well, let me try it.
Right.
So I'll tell you one night I'm on the beach in Bayville. I've done this many times, and the best places to do this is like in calm water, not like Back Bay water, not gin clear water, but kind of calm water in a bigger water environment, I guess. Not like gin clear spooky fish Back Bay. It doesn't seem to work too good in those situations. But anyway, Long Island Sound, and I had this school of bass pushing bunker outside of me. It was probably, you could see it, and it was like a really calm night, and you could see it. You could see them pushing back and forth, back and forth. This went on for maybe a half hour, and they're not leaving. So I went back to the beach. I got a board, and I started slapping the surface with the board. And then I would take my hand and I move it back and forth like that. And I do this also. I would do this. I still do it. You know how a fish like sucks in when they're sucking in like a piece of spearing or something like that. So I'd make that suction sound with
Yeah.
my hand. Go boom, boom, boom,
The
boom.
way that they make bait disappear. Yeah.
Right. With that, after a few minutes of that, this freaking school of bass turns and
Jesus.
starts coming right at me, dude. I swear to God. And the next thing you know, this gives me goosebumps thinking about it. And the next thing you know, the bass are in ankle deep of water. This middle of the night, right in front of me, man. Right in front of me. I'm like, holy shit. And I remember casting a chicken scratch bomber, first cast, like a 36, 37-inch bass, right? I'm like, holy shit. And then I caught another one, and then they were gone. It's like, wow. And then, so I started doing it more and more. And I noticed like when there was not a bite, but the fish might be there, but there's not a bite, and you start doing that, all of a sudden you're getting fish. You may not see the fish, but the fish are there. Cause it's in the surf. You don't have fish finders. You can't move around. You can't really see the fish unless they're boiling or breaking. But a lot of times in those situations, those fish are there. And that actually works. I tried writing an article for the fisherman on that night. It never got. I got published a lot, but that one never got published. I just think they thought I was full of shit or something.
I think it's for the best it didn't get published. Sometimes those little trade secrets are better to get have in your back pocket.
Somebody was looking out for me then.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Priorities, get the fish. You even picked your job around it, right? The hours worked. I mean, you've got a job where you're providing a service, which is a great service. You're really
Right.
actually giving back.
Anybody asks me, what do you do for a living? I always say I'm a guide. I never tell them. What I do is I'm a care coordinator for mentally ill adults. Basically,
Your day job.
yeah,
Since you don't fish.
people coming out of the hospital, I help them get services. Sometimes they're coming out of prisons or jails, or sometimes they're just in need from just a referral from a family, and they're in need of some help. And I try to link them to the community to help them out. And that's what I do essentially. So I'm driving all over the place doing that as well. There's a lot of paperwork. You're also out in the community, which is great. I mean, I love that job.
And it doesn't occur ever in the evenings, which is a perfect scenario
Right.
for you.
I get off I go in 8 to 4:30. Done at 4:30, I'm guiding by 7 p.m.
And I look at this scenario. We've talked about this before. He works all day. Then he's in Montauk. And he's got a wife and he's got 2 kids. I know one time in the early days when she was getting a gist of what the hell you were doing, I remember you told her, why don't you meet me at Johnny's Bait and Tackle?
Oh,
And how they reassured her, I thought was a classic. I wish you could walk me through that.
my God.
Getting introduced to the Bill experience.
that was freaking funny. I can't believe you remember that. I don't know if she was my fiance or my girlfriend at the time. And there was Johnny's Bait and Tackle, and there's Johnny's Pancake House in Montauk. Johnny's Bait and Tackle doesn't exist any longer, but it was like the premier like surf fishing shop basically in Montauk. So I probably said meet me at 7 p.m. because we probably were gonna have dinner or something. So back then there's no cell phones, but we each had a beeper. So I get there 7:15, she's not there. 7:30, she's not there. 7:45, she's not there. I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, maybe she got in an accident or something. So around 8 o'clock or whatever it was, I start going backwards. And I'm like searching for her. She's not there. I'm like, maybe I'll just go back to Johnny's Bait and Tackle. So if she shows up, she's not going to have any way to contact me. So finally, after a couple hours, I went to a payphone and I beeped her. And she calls back the payphone. She's like, where are you? Where are you? I'm like, where am I? Where are you? She's like, I'm at Johnny's. I'm at Johnny's. She went to Johnny's Pancake House, not Johnny's Bait and Tackle. Because when I tell people to meet me, it's like I don't even have to say meet me at Johnny's. That's where we meet, Johnny's Bait and Tackle. But she thought I met Johnny's Pancake House. She said, I went to the cops. I called the Coast Guard. She said, oh yeah, he's a fisherman. He's just crazy fisherman. He's always out on the rocks and stuff. they're like, oh, he's a fisherman. Oh, he probably met somebody else. They told me he probably just met somebody else.
That
So,
one that one has always made me laugh because I love the idea of them reassuring her by, look, he did not die. He's probably just with someone else.
right, I haven't died out there yet, thank
Oh
God.
God. Yeah, she even went to one of your lectures, and an 8-hour lecture, right? She wanted to really get behind the scenes.
To this day, I can't even believe somebody would sit there and listen to me for that. But nobody left. And she came, she sat there for like 45 minutes. And I remember getting home that night. She's like, I cannot believe that I could not sit there for more than 45 minutes. It's interesting kind of, but I can't do it. I don't know how those guys sit there for that long of a day. I go, I don't know either. I have no idea. So, but they
Well,
do.
Lefty Kray's wife said something very similar, and they had a great union. So I think, at some point you got to tap out.
Man, I heard so much about that guy. I wish I would have met him. I wish I would have met him.
Everybody loved Lefty. He knew how to bond instantly with
Right.
anyone. And he always had a joke. I remember he would fix peanut butter and pickle sandwiches at his house. He was very much into simple food. Obviously, he was a leader of a whole generation of fly fishermen, of World War II vet, of marksman, shoot an aspen out of the air and stuff like that, cast without a rod.
He's magical.
You jokingly say it, but I think you're serious. You could speak for hours about a darter.
I would say I could do 2 hours on the darter, at
Really?
least, maybe more. Well, I use different ones, but the primary one I use is the 2 3/8 ounce Super Strike darter.
That's your money lure.
Well, I don't really have a money lure. People ask me, what's your favorite lure? It's my favorite lure to catch a fish on, but my favorite lure is the one that catches fish. Yeah, I just like fishing the darter. I like how the fish hit it. Especially when they're aggressive. If they're on like a bigger bait, like herring. Have you ever been on a herring bite of striped bass?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the way they hit your plug is not like a spearing bite. Like on a spearing bite, they're just coming,
Right.
they're
Sucking it
sucking it.
in.
They're
Yeah.
sucking it in.
Right.
They're on herring, man. They just friggin'
Smash.
hammer it, man. They just hammer the plug. It's a completely different feeling. It's my favorite bite, that there is. Or when they're on even a snapper bite, they just hammer it.
It'd be
When
fun
they're-
to do like a lightning round with you where I would just give you a hypothetical. I say mid-September, east wind, new moon, storm coming in, and you go,
Boom, tide. Last the outgoing tide. I'm going to like Caswell's or, you know, is it a northeast wind or is it a southwest wind? How big's the water? I gotta look at the water every day. How big's the water? Is it 1 feet? Is it 2 feet? Because if it's 1 to 2, I might be out on the reef. If it's 3 to 4, I might be on the side. It's all about the tide and the wind and how that water's driving into a certain area. And then sometimes when I take people out, I'm like, I stop the truck because I have like, 7, 8, 9 different spots I can go during this wind and this tide, but which one to choose? And I can't figure out which one to choose. And I'll say, like, if you were my charter, I'll be like, Jamie, where do you want to go? You want to go to Shag, or do you want to take the walk to Caswell's? The Caswell's is a walk, Jamie, but Shag, we fish right out of the truck. I'll make it your call. No, you're the guide, Bill. This is what they'll say. You're the guide. You make the call. I'm like, well, either way, it's equally as good to catch fish. Do you want to walk or do you want to, what do you want to do? 9 times out of 10, they're like, let's fish out of the truck. I'm like, okay.
just keep hopscotching around.
Yeah. Well, you every there's a zillion different spots, especially in Montauk. I fish all over the island, not just Montauk, but in Montauk you have the north side, the south side, backwater, sand beaches, and it's all at your fingertips, right? And each spot in a spot may be literally 5, 6 feet, 7, 8 feet wide, and that spot may be good. I remember one time, Don Musso, in the surf scene, he's the premier plug builder, and his son took over his company, Super Strike. That crew, Don Musso, Charlie Ruger, I was all into that. I was, those were my guys. And I never forget, Don and this other guy, Wild Bill Dickinson, arguing about one of Don's plugs. It's a needlefish plug. And inside the needlefish, it looked like there was styrofoam. Don's going, "There's no fucking styrofoam in there." And Bill's like, "That's styrofoam." He gets the plug and he's looking at the plug. This went on for over an hour. I think it was a needlefish. Anyway, Don's like, "These are my plugs. I don't put styrofoam in my plugs." Bill's like, "What is that then?" "It looks like styrofoam. It's salt." It looked exactly like styrofoam. I'm like, "I don't know. That looks like styrofoam." So finally, Don's goes, "I got 5 of these plugs in my truck right now. I will give you all 5. We're going to cut the thing in half and we're going to find out what it is." So I don't know where they got a saw or whatever they got. And you got to realize, this is not like in somebody's house. This is on the beach in Montauk. We're in like the parking lot of Montauk,
Got
where
that
where everything happens. That's
Right.
where everything happens. And cuts it open. It was not styrofoam.
It
was
was
salt.
bust balls, the Northeast day, right? Bust some balls, right? Like it's sort of acceptable, nothing no one ever goes home hurt somehow.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all fun.
Yeah. And that culture, they'd have pies,
I
cookout.
still do, man. I mean, not
It's
as
still
much.
happening?
It's not like it was. It's not like it was.
Right.
And well, it's not like it was for me, especially because now, it's not like I have the time anymore.
Right.
I fish, I sleep, I eat because I'm guiding, and it's not like before where I could hang out with the boys for a few days and have striped bass in the parking lot, fried striped bass and butter. Oh my God. And a beer. I can't even have a beer out there because if you do, you just get dehydrated.
And you're
Can't
probably
drink
not
it.
even keeping the fish these days either to
No, I haven't kept the
cook,
fish.
So
Dude, I haven't kept the fish in I don't even know how many years. Many years.
fish has had a transition. You had a transition as well, your confidence level. The first time you had to do a lecture, you said there was a lot of nerves going into that first lecture before someone cracked the code for you.
First lecture I did, I remember I was speaking in front of 300 or 400 people. I just had started guiding, and I would prepare to the point where I'm looking at myself in the mirror and, looking at my notes, having my little notes all over the place. And then I went to a lecture at Northeast Magazine, which no longer exists, but it was a free magazine and there was a lot of people there. Not as many as my first two, but maybe like 100 people or so. And I remember Billy the Greek, who's a famous surf fisherman out here. And I told him, I prepare, I do all these things. He's like, "Listen, you don't have to prepare. I don't fucking prepare." He's like, "Just go out there and fish." And that just clicked in my head. Just go out there and fish. I basically threw my notes away that night and I was talking about eels. And I felt like the crowd wasn't even there. Nobody was there. It was just me in the room talking about what I'm talking about. And everybody, never forget, everybody's laughing, having a good time. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I want the eels 18 inches. I like them big and black." And everybody's laughing. I'm like, "Oh, I get it," And it was great. I'm like, "Wow, this is all I got to do. Is I got to go fishing every time." So that's what I do. I don't even think. I hardly prepare. I have basically when I do a lecture, I just have a little cheat sheet to keep me kind of focused.
Mm-hmm.
When I do it, they're all over the place. I don't have any PowerPoints or anything like that. But a lot of people say, "Bill, you should get a PowerPoint." I'm like, "No, if I did a PowerPoint, it would be boring."
Yeah, you'd lose your mojo.
Right.
That's the thing, right? You want to
Right.
do it how you want to do it. It's just like the way you guide. You want to guide how you want to guide. You want to have clients that are willing to. You're going to fish,
Yeah.
and they're going to fish, and they might die. They might not die, but they're heading out on the rock.
Hopefully they won't die.
Well,
I get to yell at them. "Get off that rock. Get on that rock. What are you doing?" No, I don't really yell at them.
You
Kind of, a little bit.
Yeah. You want a client you can yell at, I guess, because that means they're friends,
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some I yell at, some I don't. I never had anybody I didn't really like.
Yeah.
They all, the customers surprisingly have all been awesome,
Mhm.
except for one guy. But besides him, they've all been awesome.
Self-selection, the willingness to get up at God knows what hour, put on all this gear, follow you out into the surf. I mean, you're basically like vetting them all the way out there. Then they're
Well,
like, get on a rock. You're like,
if they're, you know what it is? If they're like cocky in any way and they,
Mhm.
I'm like, okay,
All right.
this guy, I gotta fucking calm this guy down. I'll take him on the farthest rock I can, and just have him get beat to shit. And after like 10 minutes, and if they weren't listening to me, now they're listening to me.
Yeah.
And now, okay, let's go.
Uh-huh.
Let's go to the next spot. And somehow it works out because they like it, and they gain a little bit of respect for the old man.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You had me out there filming. I had waves going over my head. I had to hold the camera up. I was underneath the water and the camera up through the wave. And the other two guys were like, "Forget it. You're on your own, Howard." That was a couple of long nights, but it was worth it.
That was fun.
Yeah. Now, you've only had one client come close to going to onto the light. That was an insane storm, though. I don't even know what you guys were doing out there.
Yeah, well, fishing.
Yeah. Did you
That's
do you go to those storms because you think the fishing's going to be better? Talking about that night where you were you kind of lost track of a guy, and that was a pretty wild storm.
Well, this was this guy, Mike. He was a tall guy, bald head, nice guy, regular customer of mine too. At the time, I don't think he booked me after this night, but
Go figure.
yeah, go figure. We were fishing in nor'easter, and it's blowing like, I don't know, gale force winds, probably 45 knots northeast, huge water, probably like 7 to 9 foot waves, maybe 10 foot waves, um, pissing rain, new moon. So because it's a new moon, that made it even more dark. Couldn't see anything, and but I knew where we could kind of safely get out to some rocks. So, because you got to fish the tides, and like when you go out to these rocks, you can't. You got to know what tide you can get to these rocks on. If you go there during high tide, you're gonna get killed. You got to go there. Last the out, first the in. Depends. So you got to know your shit. And you got to know what rock you're gonna stand on be ahead of time. We're walking out, and I have my light in the water, and I'm looking at it, and there's peanut bunker going by us, like just schools of peanut bunker. I'm like, oh, we're gonna be into some fish, and we get out on our rock. We're fishing. I was out on lead rock, and Mike was behind me, and we were casting. There's a point and there's a cove where it just drops out. The point is shallower, huge water coming in, and everything's getting flushed off this point into this deeper cove. And we were fishing that edge.
What was the weather conditions?
The weather conditions were northeast, 45 knots, pissing rain. You couldn't see anything. It's like 1 or 2 in the morning. The worst,
Stuck.
10-foot waves, 7 to 9, but they might have been 10. I don't know. Huge water. Mike's behind me, and we're fishing. I look back, and he's gone. And I'm like, and I just remember thinking, oh no, he's gone. He's gone. Because if you get washed out in the cove, you're done. So I'm like shining my light. I'm going, Mike. I'm screaming, Mike, Mike, Mike. I'm looking all over. I'm shining my light, and it must have been, I don't know how long it was. It seemed like it was forever. It must have been like a minute, maybe 2 minutes. And then I'll never forget, Mike pops up and he goes, I got washed out in the cove. Like, got washed out in the cove. Oh my God. He gets back on his rock. I'm like, I don't think this is safe anymore. I think at that point we went back. I could have lost him easily.
It takes a
That was,
lot to get you to not fish, so that must have been a heck of a night.
yeah,
Now, if you
fishing,
like it,
just not that spot.
yeah, okay, there you go. All right, that's what I thought. I remember you saying how much you like it, just literally needles in the face type of ears ringing. You want to just be facing the elements.
Oh my God. Is that not the greatest? Have you ever fished in that? That is, to me,
Yeah.
that is the greatest. When you are catching fish during a nor'easter and you have 50, 55 knots sustained winds, and I'm not even exaggerating. That's the wind, man. 50, 55 knots. And the rain is coming in at your face, and it feels like a million needles pricking your face. And the water is so loud that your ears are literally ringing for the next 2 or 3 days from how loud the water was. And you're catching bass or even bluefish, you're catching anything in that type of water. For me, it is probably the greatest fishing that I could ever experience. I mean, I can't imagine anything being better than that. You're so alive and you're so in the zone. You can't think about anything else. All you can think about is what you're doing, getting whatever you're throwing, a bucktail, whatever you're throwing, in the right water column, casting it in the right area. And even if there's spots where you have the wind at your back, right? With a 50, 55 knot wind, you have no back cast. There's no load. You can't, it's just boom. It's just all forward. Or if it's in your face, you got to go low. It's very challenging conditions, That's why at my age, I've been doing a lot of wrist stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing ever do those? The wrist, the
Oh,
gripper things?
these things, the
The
little grips.
They help me so much. I highly recommend that for anybody, getting up there in years, who's
That's a
losing
great idea.
yeah, it's really, really helped me. I do, like, I'm driving around, I'll do, like, 3 sets of 20, 25 of them, and like 3 or 4 times a day.
Just
Just so
because
just to maintain that grip on the rod when I'm fishing, because you fish for 5, 6 hours with a surf rod, casting 2 or 3 ounce lures all night long, every single night. Your grip just starts to go. You need that grip.
when you're fishing in a storm, you get to be absolutely at one with the environment. When I was fishing in hailstorms, and you're not even thinking about it, if the fish are rising ahead of you, it's this amazing feeling because it clears everybody out, and then you and the fish just get this kind of one-on-one time.
Yeah, you can't even explain it. It's an incredible feeling. Do you fish in lightning? Will you fish lightning?
It's funny. The rod is obviously a conductor, and you know that. But I
Oh, yeah.
remember fishing in the Bahamas one time, and we were miles away from a storm, and the guide says, "Hold up your rod, man." I said, "Okay." I hold it up, and he goes, "Zzz," and he just nods like, it's all electric around here right now. It's all in the air. Huh? Maybe I'm not gonna cast. So, no, I don't. I tend to lay off on the lightning.
That's the one thing, man. I do not
Yeah.
do lightning. I will sit on the beach. Lightning comes in, like a big storm comes in. I've been in many of them, and I take off everything. The cleats come off, my belt comes off, anything that's going to conduct. My rod goes over, and I sit there on the beach. I just sit. I'm like, we're sitting tight. But I've seen people fish through lightning with, bolts actually coming down around them. They just keep fishing because they're catching fish. I remember I was guiding once, and this big storm's coming at us, and similar to what you were just saying, I was fishing like a 9-foot graphite rod, and I had an electricity bolt go from my rod to my finger. Ever see those things, those round things where you touch them and they conduct electricity? You ever see those things? Just
So
like
like a
that.
mad scientist kind of vibe.
Right. I was like, okay, we're going back in the truck. And the one guy, one of my customers, wouldn't come. I'm like, dude, this storm, this is serious stuff. You need to get back in the truck,
I was curious, have you figured out that sleep has always been something that you need less than others? Just go through sheer adrenaline. 3 hours sleep, you're up, you're gone. How have you made
No.
that work with this schedule that you figured out?
I haven't figured that out, Jamie. I don't know how I do that. I mean, it's weird because during ski season now, it's family season now, and this time of year, I just want to sleep. I want to go to bed early. I want to go to bed at 10. I want to get up at 8. That's what I want to do. During the fishing season, something clicks. I don't know what it is. And at first, I always tell myself, I don't know how I'm going to do it. I actually not only tell myself, I talk to my wife. I don't know how. She's like, well, you're going to do it. You do it every year. This is what you do. When I'm not on that much sleep, I feel lazy. In the wintertime, because I'm sleeping, I don't know if it's because I'm sleeping normally, but I feel lazy. When I'm doing the guided trips or just fishing for myself and I'm not getting any sleep, I feel like, let's fucking go. Let's fucking go. Get out of my fucking way. Let's go. I don't know what it is.
I know what it is.
Tell me. Then maybe I'll know.
It's adrenaline. I mean, I have a father who literally defies logic when he's anywhere near water. Going on a trout stream, going up and over fences and stuff, and he's getting on the ground looking for fish, and then he comes home. He can't do anything like that. Adrenaline just starts surging through him.
The whole season?
Yeah, that's brutal.
Is that what it is?
No, man, I don't know.
Sometimes it is.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
sometimes I lay awake. Like I'll do
It's
like
love,
a double.
Bill. You're in love with those fish.
That could be.
You're love
That could
sick.
be. That could be.
Yeah, there's no
That could
way.
be. Because you're dead tired. You think you can't sleep because you're thinking about fish.
Mhm.
You've only slept 2 or 3 hours in the last, 24, and you try to go to sleep in the back of my truck. You think you're going to sleep like that, and you're like, "Oh my god, I'm missing a bite," or you're thinking about your next move. I don't know. I'm like, I don't wanna think about it, but it doesn't stop
Are there other guys out there doing what you're doing?
at this point.
Full-time surf guides doing
No,
the
there's no
schedule
full-time
you're
surf
doing?
guys.
Is anybody else doing that?
No, no, there's no full-time surf guide.
Were they ever? Did a lot of people just go away?
I would say Fred Galafaro, God rest his soul, was the inspiration to become a surf guide.
Mhm.
And I don't know if he was doing it full time, but he was probably close to full time. And Tom Melnick, who followed Fred, they both worked for the fishermen. He was doing it a lot. Actually, it was great when Tom was guiding because we would bounce off each other. Hey, Bill, we got a bite going on over here. Why don't you just go over there? And I tell him, and he's the one who got me to do doubles. I'm like, you do a double? I've done triples before, but that's insane. Doubles are. It's not like doubles in like a boat. Like you're walking, sometimes you're walking 4 or 5 miles in one trip with a backpack on. So, and you do two of those in a row. It's like, whoa.
Wow.
I always get sleep in between. I get like at least 2 or 3 hours of sleep in between.
You got your hustle. Somehow you figured out how to shower and use the facilities and sleep,
Right.
all out there. You've got your spots.
Even going to the bathroom, you got to figure out, when you're going to do that.
Yeah.
Do I hold it now? Do I hold it or do I go to the bathroom? And then sleeping in your truck. Oh my God. Because in between charters, or even if I'm fishing alone, you're sleeping in your truck. Like I'll do like a 3 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. and then I might have a 2 a.m. next. Decisions.
You're like a homeless person, basically.
Yeah, homeless person.
Because you get to be where you love. When did you first lay eyes on Montauk? Because this has been a love affair for a long time.
You gotta realize this is back before the internet, back before cell phones. I'd read the Fisherman, and we call it the Bible. The Fisherman, the Bible, Long Island Fisherman, and they would talk about Montauk all the time. And I'm like, when I get my car, I'm gonna go out to Montauk. So, in I want to say 1982, that's when I got my car. That's when I inherited the old 1975 Ford Granada with a hole in it, the hole in the fender, rust hole. And one of the first things I did is I took my whatever gear I had and I drove out to Montauk. And I remember driving down Sunrise Highway and the sun was coming up. It was in my eyes. I'm like, wow, that's why they call it Sunrise Highway. I could not believe the place. With the cliffs, you've been there, with the scenery, with the fish. Well, I wasn't really catching any fish, but you went to Johnny's Bait and Tackle and he had all the pictures with all the big fish up there. My goal was, okay, it's such a big place. I'm going to learn one or two spots first.
Mm-hmm.
And by spot, I mean spot, very narrow spot, like, 20-foot wide little section. And I'm going to fish every tide and every wind until I start catching fish there and figure out what tides these fish are feeding on because the structure there looked great. And back then they called it the pillbox, just to the right of the light. A pillbox from World War II there. All that area is considered the south side of Montauk. And the outgoing current, if you're looking out in the water, moves left to right. And I'm figuring, well, the outgoing current is going to be pushing off the lighthouse into where I'm fishing, right? So it's got to be an outgoing water spot. Plus, being from where I was fishing, everything seemed to be. I was always told outgoing water, which is complete nonsense. But as a kid, that's what I don't know yet. I'm learning. So for the first year, I think the first year I didn't catch anything. I was just fishing outgoing, every wind, everything. But I kept on fishing outgoing. Then some guy's like, yo, you got to fish incoming water. But I didn't know. He didn't tell me the reason why. Now I know the reason why. Because whenever you have a point next to a cove, what happens is the point, like there's another point, it's called Browns to my right. And everything comes off of Browns, dumps into Turtle Cove. And as it dumps in, the water builds. The water builds in the cove and it shoots out right at the pillbox, right? But if I fished it on outgoing water, the water is moving left to right, hits the lighthouse, and the beef of the current goes way out. It doesn't come into that cove. But I didn't know that at the time. Now I know all about that.
So these little nuggets that you picked up, each one, I remember being on fly streams sometimes. There was always the old guys walking the banks that would give you just a little nugget, and it would just
Right.
shift everything up like
Just
10
shift
notches.
that
Yeah.
was a great piece of advice because then I started learning other areas. I started looking at things a little bit differently, you know. But that was probably 83. So 82, I don't think I caught a fish out there. And then I started fishing like after high school, probably that summer. I mean, I was going out there constantly.
It's another thing,
84, I think.
you
Yeah.
were fishing in tough conditions as well,
Yeah.
and it was
Well,
on the decline.
84,
You had to wait your
I
turn to go
laid
out
off
there.
a little bit out there,
Yeah.
and I was fishing mainly the North Shore because the North Shore of Long Island wasn't affected as much by that fishery because they're migrating fish, so they're coming out of the Hudson. Montauk fish is primarily a Chesapeake fish, so um, Montauk was really dead, kind of like it. I mean, it's not really dead now, but I mean, it's not what it used to be. So, but the North Shore of Long Island was really, productive, and we did really well, during the moratorium. And a lot of guys were like, "Why do we have this moratorium? Look at all these fish. This is Hudson River fish we're catching." One of the reasons why we had the moratorium is they were trying to get the moratorium, and then the PCBs in the Hudson. Even though Hudson fishery was fine, it was the PCB problem, from Loco or whatever it was, right? And they went through that to get the moratorium.
Right. They had to find a way to bring the fish back, and they needed the right precedent to be able legally to do it. That's
Right.
why it's going to be so hard maybe to do it again. But people that
It
fished
worked.
post-moratorium basically got every dream they ever had come true in terms of fishing.
I mean,
Yeah.
my best year ever to this day was 1991.
Mm-hmm.
So that was what, 7 years after moratorium. It
Mm-hmm.
depends on, I think, on the state. Every state did a little bit different.
What did 91 look like to you? That was on the other end of the
Dude,
moratorium.
91 was like, oh my God. I mean, there was, back then I would like almost look down on blitz fishermen. Oh, you're a fucking blitz fisherman, going out there during the blitz. Because I fish all night. I fish for big fish, that's how it was. Typically, there were blitzes almost every day in the fall. And when they blitz out there, they're usually on the whitebait. I would never pass up a good blitz. When I'm talking blitz, I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of fish at your feet, boiling at your feet, feeding on bay anchovies. So this night I fished on the north side of Montauk, and I remember I had like maybe one or two fish. I fished the whole night. It was just like not a good night. And I'm coming around on the north side, what's called Clark's Cove. And there's like 10 guys in Clark's Cove, and the fish are boiling there. I'm like, wow, there's a good blitz. So I'm like, all right, let me get out of my truck. I start catching some fish, and I'm catching fish one after another, and they're all at your feet. And beyond that, like if you made like a 50-yard cast, the bluefish were lined up. So I'm like, okay, this is cool. I can catch bluefish, bass. They're really, really good. There's like 3 acres right in front of me of fish. I'm like, but then it got to get a little crowded. So then I come from Clark's Cove. This is just at first crack of dawn. And little did I know, the fish were from Clark's Cove to the lighthouse, wall to wall. I'm not talking like a school here, school there. They were wall to wall from ankle deep of water, just right on shore, to about 30 yards out was all bass. About 50 yards out was just a line of friggin' bluefish. So either one. I mean, and so that blitz lasted. It was me and Jackie. I don't know. Have you ever heard of Jackie?
Yeah, he was in Running the Coast, actually.
Oh, he was?
Yeah, I got the footage, and we were able to share it, luckily. Zeno?
Famous.
Yeah.
Yeah, Zeno. Yep,
Yeah.
yep. Zeno Holmgren.
Yeah.
He is one. He pretty much invented wetsuiting out there.
You need to go back and look at the movie. We did a
Yeah,
whole
I got to go back. I haven't watched it in a couple years, so I got to go check it out again. So, me and Jack, we always used to talk about the Blitz of '91. It was 2 day. I think it was on a Tuesday. It was 2 days after the October full moon. And anyway, these fish were wall to wall, over a mile stretch of bass and blues. I got there at dawn, and at 10 in the morning, it had not changed. I'm sitting there on my cooler rack drinking a Beck's beer. Because I fish all night. To me, it's like 9 o'clock at night,
Right.
So I'm drinking a Beck's beer on my cooler rack, looking at this shit. I just was like, I couldn't believe it. So I went back out, and by noon, I had enough. I must have caught, I can't even tell you how many fish. It was every cast, It was just probably with no exaggeration, 400 or 500 fish,
Biblical.
and biblical.
Yeah.
And I left at noon, and it had not changed. This fish was still from the lighthouse to Clark's Cove, wall to wall, and beyond that were the bluefish. That was the biggest blitz I've ever seen.
It's
And
amazing.
that year, I could go out. I mean, the North Shore was fucking hot. We had the sand eel bite. We had a big sand eel bite on the North Shore that everybody knew about. That lasted till like '96, but that year was just a phenomenal year. Phenomenal.
If people would believe in the science and also believe in what it could be with a little patience, it would blow minds, really. I mean, what could be created again through just a little belief in science? I see the pushback. I've been reading some of the literature. They kick the can
Right. Well,
year.
it's a lot of politics.
Right.
A lot of guys have a lot of interest in keep fishing till that last fish. Some
Mhm.
guys, I swear, they'll if there's one fish left, they have to kill it.
You've been through all these periods at Montauk. What is the state of the fishery today?
The Hudson fishery and the Chesapeake fishery are different fisheries. So I think the primary issue these days is the Chesapeake fishery. And what I've seen the past many years, even when we did running the coast, it was in decline back then, and it continues to decline. People always ask me, "How's your year going?" And I always compare it to what it should be and what it could be to those years. I'm like, it's not good. Yeah, we catch some fish, but nowhere near like it should be. I think there's several factors, in my opinion, several reasons for the decline. Pollution in the Chesapeake is one of them. All the runoff from all the cesspools, the depletion of bunker in the Chesapeake is another one. One bunker filters 4 gallons of water per minute. Take out the bunker, and you got a bay that's a little bit more stagnant. And you got a seal issue. I think the seals are a big issue these days. Whether people want to recognize it or not, I see it every day. I'm on the water every day. So seals to me are definitely in. And then you got micro or myrobacteriosis, which is
Yeah, mycobacteriosis is the official
yes,
name.
yes, sir. Well, it's if you read about it, it's 100%, 100% fatality rate. So 3 or 4 years ago, I would say in Montauk, half the bass I was catching had sores all over them, and they're all going to die. I think that has been a big issue. They're not doing anything now. That's what they've decided to do. Next year, they're going to reevaluate it. I think they should just go back to what they did back in '84, which is a moratorium, catch and release only. But the commercials, here's the issue. If you're going to go to a moratorium, the commercial guys say it's a total non-fishery. No catch and release, no nothing. Because if we can't catch them, you can't catch them. Basically, I think that's the argument. But that's going to kill a lot of small time businesses. It's going to kill bait and tackle shops. It's going to kill, you know, local plug makers. The list goes on and on. You're talking $1 billion industry. What they need to do is exactly what they did last time. I don't know how they would do it. Last time they did it, they got it done through the PCB's issue in the Hudson. So, but they have to go back. I say one at 36, one at 36 inches. None of the slot limit. The problem is with the slot limit, there's not enough enforcement. I think there's for the entire Long Island, which is how big is Long Island? It's 100 and something mile stretch, right? I think there's like 4 DEC officers to cover the whole coastline. It might be like 6 or 9, but still, whatever it is, you never see them. I never see them. Matter of fact, I called one guy out. I saw a guy poaching in Montauk, and I called the DEC officer. Very nice. He's very into it. I'm like, listen, this guy's poaching, but he's in Riverhead. I'm like, dude, you're in Riverhead by the time you get here. And he's going to be gone. This guy's poaching's going to be gone. He's like, I'm doing 95 right now on the Sunrise Highway. I'm going to be there. And he came pretty quick, actually. But, I mean, that's just an example. He said he only found one fish. I go, well, there was more than one fish, but
Right.
whatever. The point is there's just not enough. There's not enough enforcement. There's no enforcement here. So everybody knows that they can get away with shit. Commercial guys, they not only fish for striped bass, commercial guys get tags for striped bass. So I'm not sure how many tags they get, but they get tags from their brothers and their sisters and their aunts and uncles, and that's how they get their quota. And technically, their aunts and their uncles and their sister, who's ever has tags, is supposed to be on the boat. but I don't think that's happening. To my knowledge, it's not happening. And I'm not blaming the commercial guys. Listen, the recreational guys take a lot of fish, and they take. There's a lot of poaching. The poaching is a huge issue, both commercially and recreationally. I mean, I see poaching all the time. I can go to. I can take you to 10 different places on the island on any given night where people are poaching, and there's no enforcement. And the enforcement is the big issue. You know, even the guy selling the fish, they know what they can get away with, they know what they can't get away with. So, there's a lot of that going on. But there's so much pressure on them right now. And I think that's why we're seeing the fishery what it is. And people say, well, they're taking deeper. This is what I heard back in the 80s. They're taking deeper routes. The water's too cold. The water's too warm. It's this, it's that. It has nothing to do with that. It's the fishery. The fishery is not what it once was, because if they were taking deeper routes, they would still expand the schools. If the schools were big enough, they'd expand their range. They would be out in the deep and in the shallows. It's interesting. I see like different schools. They'll come in and there'll be a school that will follow the deeper pass. And I know the boats are hitting them, but there's also schools that will follow the shoreline. And it seems like those schools stay on the shoreline, especially I'm talking about in Montauk. You can tell they stay on the shoreline. You can almost follow the fish they start on the sand beaches, and then on the spring migration, they move west to east all along the rocks. And I always say they're staging. There's one place where they stage up, and there's big, massive schools there a lot of times, and they're there for a couple weeks, and it's right before the rocks start in Montauk. They'll stage up there because it's the last piece of major structure before the rocks start, and then they move west to east. But the point is that there's different schools of fish. I think people mistakenly think, oh, it's just one huge school of fish, and it's not like that. It's certain schools I think do different things, and there's just less of them now. Less schools, less fish. You got to get involved. You got to write your letters. I do try to advocate through the Surf Rats Ball, the guys on the website, and through the Instagram, and do the best I can.
I watched some of those netters from the cliffs a couple of times. It's pretty amazing how much they can take at a shot. That's something that's difficult to quantify. As you say, they can get extra tags, but recreational fishermen do play a large part as well. And that's something we can actually control.
Sure. Look at the wreck boats. I mean, they're going out, and they got, how many people do they have on the boats? 20, 30, 40. And they're going in and out all day, limiting. The whole goal for them is to limit out. And then they'll put pictures. Oh, look at this. Everybody's holding dead bass. Well, I think it could change. I think with education, it could change. People are coming on those boats, not necessarily to take fish. They're coming on the boats to have a good time and to go fishing. Going fishing and killing fish are kind of two different things, in my view. Both on recreational side, commercial side, the right thing is to do for the future of the fishery.
Yeah. Continue the education.
I used to have customers. I always had ice in my cooler. And most of my customers, maybe like 60% of my customers would probably take a bass. Now, none of them. Just because of education. Because when I take them out, I'm like, listen, you can keep a fish if it's legal. This is the deal with the fishery. I would recommend, just snapping a picture of it quick, and then you'll have that. It's better than, you can buy fish in the store. So, and they're like, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, that's cool. And I don't clean them for them anyway. And I don't clean fish anymore, man. I when I first started, I cleaned fish for people. Oh my God, that was a nightmare.
Bring them home, put them in the cooler.
I had a guy, I was going locally, I was fishing locally here, and I stopped at a 7-Eleven. This guy, he was from another country, and he says, oh, I have my waders on and all my gear, and I'm getting a cup of coffee, and he's like, oh, you going fishing? I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, what'd you catch, striped bass? He's like, oh, you keep them and eat them? Oh, no, I just throw them back. And with that, he starts yelling at me. How can you throw it back? I'm like, dude, I'm just, going fishing. And he's literally getting pissed at me that I'm throwing fish back. I just couldn't believe it. So weird.
He was upset for you. He was upset with you for that.
For this is like, I'm in there. It had to be like, it's probably a morning bite. So probably it was like 3:30 in the morning, I'd say, something like that. And you wouldn't think. You go in with your waiters on, and the guy at the counter starts yelling at, he's a worker there. He starts yelling at me about, throwing fish back instead of keeping them. I think he might have even said, fuck you as I left.
Wow.
So I recall,
Wow.
you
And what
know.
is it? The customer's always right, except for at his place.
Right.
People are at least aware that the fishery's in decline. Some of these people may not even know that, you know.
I think most guys will tell you, like, it's funny, I go to the meetings, some of the meetings, and the recreational guys will be like, I'm talking about charter boat captains and everything like that. They'll be like, oh yeah, I see no problem with the fishery. A lot of them, not all of them, but behind closed doors, oh man, this fishery's fucked. It's not what it once was, not what it should be, not what it could be. It could be spectacular if it was just, they would just do the right thing.
And God knows if the population comes back, there'll be more cool places to catch them. Like, how about the old Loco plan?
Oh,
Yeah.
So there was a time in my life I would fish like just probably 7 days a week, probably night and day both. And in the winter, I would go through 4 to 5 days a week, all winter long. And I could do that because out here we had the local stacks, LILCO, which is now PSCG. Their stacks would blow out hot water, and the striped bass would get trapped there, and we'd catch them all winter long. It was really a fun fishery. So towards the end of the season, it might have been the last day of surf fishing season, maybe December 15th, I want to say. There's this area out there, it's called the T-bar, which is basically you walk out to a bar about 60 yards out, and there's T. You can walk either side of the T-bar. So I decided I'm going to go out there, I'm going to make 7 casts, and then I'm going to go to the stacks. And the stacks were friggin' cranking then, man. They were, when I say cranking, I mean they were blowing out the hot water, which creates fog on top of the water. So anybody out there you couldn't see. As I walk through the parking lot, and I'm going to the T-bar, there's a guy running in a parking lot, like a jogger. Pass him, didn't think anything of it. So I go to T-bar, I make my 7 casts, and I walk down to the stacks. And I go out into the fog. Nobody could see out there. And a lot of people got washed away. I don't think anybody died, but a lot of people got washed out there.
Pretty
Catching,
intense. If
yeah,
people are
pretty
thieves,
intense.
that's pretty intense. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm the only one out there. And I'm out there for maybe, I don't know, an hour and a half. And I see these 2 guys yelling for me to come in. And I come in, he's like, yeah. The one guy's like, yeah, that's him, that's him. There's 1 set of footprints. I'm like, holy shit, these guys are fucking gonna arrest me. I'm like thinking I did something wrong. I'm out in the stacks. Maybe I'm not supposed to be out here, or something. Maybe there's a new rule or a law. I have no idea. So we're looking for you. We're looking for you. Somebody reported you missing. I was like, what? It's like, yeah, some guy reported you missing. I'm like, oh, well, I'm here. Everything's cool. So, well,
Good.
she's like, well, the Coast Guard's out and the Coast Guard's coming, all this stuff. So we're walking back, and it's kind of like you can't see the T-bar from where we're walking. So we get to around the corner, and there's like 60 people that see me, and they start clapping. Everybody's clapping. What? And we get to the T-bar, dude, and there's divers in the water. Coast Guard's in the water. Everybody's looking for me, right? We finally get to the parking lot, and I have people all over, and there's like 4 fire departments there, cops all over the parking lot. I had to sign this statement saying that I felt so horrible. All these people are coming, but so good and relieved that if something happened to you, they'd be there for you. And I had to sign a certificate saying that I wasn't dead, that I'm alive, my name, my address, all that stuff. And I'm apologizing to like the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. We need this training. This is how we get funded." So I felt a little bit better. But that
How
was.
did the rumor start that there was a man down and that was you?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the guy in the parking lot
Hmm.
called because he saw me I made 7 casts on the T-bar, and then I left. He saw me on the T-bar. And it was snowing. He probably thought, who's this sick motherfucker going out in the water when it's snowing? It, and I left after my 7. He thought I drowned out there. He called the Coast Guard. or the police. I don't know who he
Was
called.
this the guy you saw running?
Yeah, the guy I saw running.
Just out there jogging in these conditions, and then he saw you, and
Yeah,
he knows nothing about fishing, and why would
no,
someone stop after 7 casts? He must be dead.
yeah. Well, he probably, well, no, I was going to take 7 casts. In his mind, this is what I think. In his mind, he's thinking, this guy, how's this guy possibly going fishing? It's snowing out. What is he doing out there? And then he didn't see me because it was, kind of weird conditions to go fishing in. I'm sure for some people, not for us, but you know, for some people, I mean, people have no idea what we do. If you tell people oh yeah, I'm a fisherman, they think you're on a dock or something.
They don't have any idea. Dude, you're undergoing acupuncture, physical therapy,
Right.
special workouts. You've tried it all, right? Acupuncture work? Okay.
Dude,
Something.
you gotta
Yeah.
try acupuncture. You gotta
Yeah.
try it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't believe in it. I went to one guy and one woman actually, and she didn't do anything. My wife convinced me to give it another try somebody else. And I found somebody else. And at the time, it was from fishing. My bag is sometimes 16 pounds and it goes over my shoulder. And then I have the surf rod in my hand too, sometimes a backpack as well. And all that weight all the time, every day for 5, 6 hours a day, eventually gets to you. So I started physical therapy and it was working, but not really that well. And I went back to acupuncture. So I go to this guy and he sits me down, puts one needle in my ear. He's like, how's that feel? I'm like, feels the same. I still can't move my arm. And then he puts another needle in my ear. He goes, how's that feel? Oh, I still can't move my arm. Puts a third needle in my ear. And I raised my arm all the way up and I had no pain. And I thought to myself, here's what I said to the guy. I'm like, what did you just do?
Right.
To the doctor. Oh, that's the spot. He's going. Now, I was pain free, and then I was back in pain. But I was like, wow, there's something to this. I mean, there's no way there's not something to this. So then I started to go to him, and I do the physical therapy at
Mhm.
the same time to get me
Mhm.
fishing again.
Do you ever look at this and go, how is this sustainable, or are you just going to always adapt to the environment to be able
No,
to?
I do look at it as how it's sustainable because I'm not getting any younger. Just turned 60 years old. So now it's not like I was young where you could just bounce. You could just do nothing all winter, or maybe from skiing most of the winter and not working out, but still skiing. It's a little bit of exercise, but it's not enough. Now I got to lift weights. I got to do the things I need to do, and I had to lose some weight. I still have to lose more weight. I always tell people, yeah, I'm overweight, but I'm in pretty freaking good shape. Because that's you got to be.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to continue to do what I do, and I want to do it forever, I love what I do. I want to do it forever. Um, you got to you have to train. You have to when you
Yeah.
get older.
This is a
You can
sport.
get away with it when you're younger, but not when you're older.
Like your son, he's now a baseball player. Is he training year round now?
Yeah, he trains year round. He's just got committed to Plattsburgh college.
Congratulations.
So yeah, thank you. So he's going to play college ball. So I'm very proud of him. He's got that drive. He's got that drive like I do in a different way, which I wish he fished, but that's another story.
One son or daughter will take to it, and the other two don't even want to get anywhere near it.
Right.
They're raised under the same roof, but just they either have that gene or they don't.
I think I kind of fucked him up when he was young. Did I ever tell you what I did to him?
You might have in passing, you might have, but I don't know if I have it top of mind.
He was like 7 years old. I put him in a wetsuit
Hmm.
and I took sneakers. You need spikes to stand on the rocks out there. So I took his sneakers and I drilled spikes into his sneakers. But what I didn't know is the spikes were going through his sneakers.
Oh God.
And when he stepped on them, they went into his feet. So put the sneakers on. We're walking down to the rocks in Montauk. And of course, at 7 years old, I have to take him on the hardcore rocks in Montauk. He's walking down. He's like, Dad, my feet are killing me, but something's in my shoe. I'm like, just keep walking. You're fine. We're almost there. Just keep walking. Get him up on the rock. And I'm like, the waves are hitting him. So I'm behind him,
Bleeding.
holding his back like this.
Oh,
And I'm like, just cast. Fish are right there.
oh
Just
my
cast,
God.
just cast. And he's casting. And
Poor kid.
he's complaining about, Dad, my feet hurt. My feet hurt. We get back up. I take his shoe off. And there's little blood marks, like little dots of blood marks where the spikes were going through all over his feet. I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? And I think that like really
You wanted so
did
bad
something. I
to
want
turn him
I,
into a fisherman.
I wanted it too bad. I think I pushed him too hard, too fast, bobber in a lake, in a pond, and caught some like crappie or something.
That's the
But
classic
no,
entry, right? The worm and the bobber to get the rod bend, to get them addicted to
yeah,
the rod bend. Yeah.
yeah.
But
So
he may be a baseball player. He may not be a fisherman either way. Because I think,
yeah.
pain might not, because pain's not a problem for the old man when it comes to fishing. So,
It's true. Well, hopefully he asked me to go fishing this summer, so I'm hoping we can get it in.
well, I hope to be up there fishing again, man. We'll save your arrowhead tricks for next time. But this guy's got a couple other tricks besides just calling in fish with his hands. He can also find arrowheads near trees. So he's got a lot of tricks
I'm
out.
not too good at it though.
So every time you go out, probably you're picking up knowledge, and so you're just able now to look at the landscape and see it in such a different way, I would imagine, than when you first drove out. How does it look to you compared to when you first drove over that hill in the sun in that
Man,
Ford Granada?
I remember when I first started, I mean, reading the beach was really difficult, like reading water. Now I can look at water in like 2 seconds. I'm like, I can figure out. I didn't have that knowledge and I was way too cocky. And I, I thought when I was really young that, I'm the man. That's how I thought of fishing. I think patience and studying a lot, reading a lot. And being out there. Being out there is the key, obviously. But reading, they're very good. Young guys are very good fishermen. Don't get me wrong. But a friend of mine said, "You're at your best. You're in your prime as a surf fisherman in your 50s because you can still do everything that you need to do physically, and you have all that knowledge base." I'm like, wow. Wild Bill Dickinson told me that.
What was the biggest mistake you made of what you were throwing out there? When you think of a plug or a lure that you use and you just shake your head now and go, "Oh Lord, that was wrong take, wrong place, wrong time for that."
A lot of plugs I just had no idea, like a bottle plug. Bottle plug is a plug that you need current to fish. Unlike a darter, people think you need current to fish a darter, but you
Mhm.
do not.
Mhm.
Bottle plug, you need current. And you read about the bottle plug, and there's nobody telling you that you need current when you read it in those days.
Mhm.
And I would throw it in like these back bays, thinking, and I'm like, this thing doesn't swim. I don't, now I use it all the time. A lot of things, bucktails. Bucktails, they say, are an art. I don't know if they're an art. I think they're the easiest. I mean, it's a fly with a lead head, right? But there's so many. It's so diverse.
The
It's all
bucktail is a classic, right? I mean,
right.
that's sort of the classic. Yeah.
Yeah. The whole thing about a bucktail is to get. I mean, there's one level you reel it in, you cast out, reel it in, catch a fish. But there's another level by knowing your terrain, knowing where the rocks, knowing that rock 50 yards out has a deep side to it, and you may be going fast, and just to drop your rod or slow down your retrieve when it drops out next to that rock, and then pick it back up again. To get your bucktail down in that little trough, and then there's another little trough, and then there's another little trough, knowing when to drop. That's where, that's when you get beyond what you used to be, just reeling it in, you know, because anybody can just reel it in and catch a fish, but you can catch more fish and potentially bigger fish if you know all that terrain, know what ounce to use bucktail, know when to drop it, know when not to drop it, things like that, little things, you
Would
know.
you say there's an ounce that you use more than any other? I know some people are really reluctant to go too heavy.
No, it's all about the conditions, I mean, in Montauk, I would say one of my favorite. I probably use an ounce and a half more than
Mhm.
anything else. But sometimes I'm using a half ounce, depending on the bait. Sometimes I'll take a bucktail and I'll cut the hairs off of it to make it thinner. Right in the field, I'll just take my pliers and cut the hair off to make it thinner profile. You know, right when I'm out there because I have to because the bait's thinner and they're picky. Other times I'll use, I mean, this year I've used up to 4 ounces. I was throwing 4 ounce bucktails in
Really?
huge water, but the 3 ounce wasn't doing it. I'm like, let's go to four. When we went to four and we had fish, 4 ounces, you better be wearing a finger guard,
Oh boy.
you
Oh
know?
boy. I know Shulkin won't go to four. He doesn't believe in going to four, but I told him, they're using that and they're catching them.
Well, sometimes you have to. I go with whatever the conditions tell me
Yeah.
to. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes they tell me 4, sometimes they tell me half ounce, 3/8 of an ounce.
Ha-
September on the last of the outgoing with southwest wind, and there might be a spot right down the beach that might be northeast wind on the first of the incoming tide, and you got like a little slot, like a half-hour slot. One time, I'll give you an example. One time we were fishing on the north side, and there's this one spot in August. In August, there's a lot of bluefish, but August is my favorite time to fish for bigger fish, just simply because there's a lot of big resident fish that hold in the rips, and they come in at night to feed off snappers. So, but you got to fish really specific tides. So at this one spot, the tide is right when it turns on the outgoing. You got about a 20-minute window. And after that 20-minute window, what happens is the striped bass leave and the bluefish come on. So I took out this one guy, and I think we were fishing eels, throwing snakes. He caught like 130 pound, 135-pound bass on like almost consecutive casts. And then he made another couple bass. And what happens is the current starts, after 20 minutes, this current starts moving a little bit harder. So those big resident bass that don't want to fight that current, they move out and the bluefish move in. And I'm like, dude, we're out of here. I'm like, and he's freaking out. He's like, I just caught the biggest fish in my life. What do you mean we're moving? I'm like, it's going to be all bluefish. Oh, and then, I think we stayed. Sure enough, the next cast was a bluefish. I'm like, yeah, we're out of here. And we went to another spot, and he caught, I think, another biggest fish he ever caught in his life. So it was pretty cool. It was a good night, He always he's a really good fisherman now, man. He turned into a monster. That guy turned into a monster. Oh, he has a good story. He was my customer at the time, and I used to fish with him. We went to Cuddy Hunk together, and he just like disappeared. We were supposed to fish a tournament together, and he just like disappeared. And years later, this was back in, I think, 2016, and a couple years ago, he called me.
Oh, he literally just dropped out of communication.
Yeah, just dropped out. He wasn't calling me back, wasn't returning my text, nothing. We went to Cuddy Hunk together. He had to leave because I think his father-in-law had a heart attack or something in the middle of the trip, and I never heard from him again. I thought I did something to him or something. I've seen a lot of people change through the years. Like, they'll go out fishing with me, and their whole mindset changes. So he called me a couple years ago. He's like, Bill, I got something to tell you. I didn't mean to blow you off, but let's go fishing. I don't need you as a charter. I'll pay you. But we'll just go fishing. We'll go wherever you want to go. So we go out, and he tells me the story. So the story was that he was a banker. He worked he had a couple offices. He had one in Long Island, one in Massachusetts. During the summer, the fall run, he was spending all his time at Montauk, and he was fishing the south side. He's, Bill, I was pitching up a tent. You don't know how many 40-pound fish I caught. And he was spending weeks at a time. But his wife thought he was working. So his wife had called him at work. His job said, well, where's Johnny? Where's Johnny? And the work says, I don't know. We haven't seen Johnny in, weeks. We don't know where he is. So I guess when he went home, his wife thought he was cheating. And they separated shortly after that. And a few years later, they got back together. But he couldn't fish. He wasn't allowed to fish. And the first time he went fishing was with me. That was his first night out.
Who else would you go with?
I go, you think that's a good idea? Fishing with me? I mean, this is why it all started, right? He's like, yeah. But now his wife has him on tracker now. So everywhere he fishes, he's got the Apple. So she knows exactly where he's at. But he fishes. He's hardcore, man. He's out in a wetsuit now. He swims. He catches a lot of big fish. Interesting.
When you go as hard as you guys have gone in, the significant others have to figure it out. You guys have figured it out.
Yeah, well, not really.
At the beginning of Chasing Silver, we say friendships, marriages, and even one's own sanity can be called into question.
That's true. What did Eric the Tree Man say? Surfcaster's wife or something like that. I don't know. Well, when you come out, just give me a ring.
Yeah, man. You can get some sleep tonight.
I'll sleep. I went to bed at like 9:30 last night. Got up at 8.
I feel like every time we talk, it just keep going.
No, I listened to the whole thing on Andy Mill. I mean, I didn't know who Andy Mill was. I was like, oh my God, that guy is a fucking legend. Dude. One of the best podcasts I've ever heard, Jamie. I'm not kissing your ass.
I appreciate that. It's funny because that was one of the most difficult podcasts I've done. I had notes all over. I know him too well, and the number of things he's done trying to distill all that down.
Wow, he led the life. And the reason why he wasn't number one skier in the world, he says, I was number 6. I could have been number 1, and I wanted my son to hear it. The commitment that you have to have.
Dude, this was fun. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me.
How's your bourbon looking? How far did we go? Do you got a little left?
A little bit.
You look at this guy. He's in training. He's drinking his water. He's in
a little water, a little bourbon.
Not cursing. I mean, it's primetime Bill. You know.
Next Tuesday, which is part 2, the sights, sounds, and the stories from quite a ride through the dunes and on the beaches as we go fishing with Bill Wetzel.
A special thanks to our friends at Madison River Fishing Company for being part of this journey. They've been providing quality fishing products worldwide for 40 years and are indispensable to fly fishermen in the know. Find them at mrfc.com.